What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Javi here, and I'm finally back with a brand new movie review. Been a long time now, hasn't it? This is going to be my first review since Iron Man 3, and very appropriately, the first one is the next Marvel Phase 2 movie, Thor the Dark World. So let's get to it. I have to say that Thor isn't really my favorite of the Avengers. However, if you disagree and love Thor, totally cool, man. Totally cool. I'm just one guy stating my opinion, so please don't take that my word as God because it's not. But I always felt that his movie was the weakest of the Avenger tie-in movies, and after seeing Thor: The Dark World, I still feel the same way, man. With that said, as sequels go, this was a really good sequel and does everything a good sequel should do. But at the same time, it wasn't perfect. But let's get started with those things that I really just enjoyed. Well, I love the action in this movie. I especially loved the Dark Elves. These are the type of bad guys I want to see Thor going up against. Those sort of bad guys that are like not human. They do not look human. They do not act human. They are something from another world entirely. I mean, these are the sort of bad guys that previously you only saw in the Lord of the Rings movies in terms of film. You probably saw them all the times in games, novels, but you know, this is the Thor movie that just brought those type of bad guys to life. Oh yes, and of course, 1980s cartoons were filled with these types of bad guys, of course. But and I also loved just the action scenes were just truly, truly awesome. Very, very well done. Showed off some really old school martial arts action. And as a fan of shows such as Spartacus and Vikings, okay, just for clarification here, the term martial arts comes from the Romans. It means like, the Mars, the Roman god of war, the art of war, martial arts. So it actually dates back like, to the Romans and was referring to like really ancient like systems of combat. It's not just, karate, judo, jujitsu. Just so we're clear when, I'm using that term, martial arts. But yeah, I just love like those old school martial arts action scenes. The action scenes are like way intense. Thor and company are shown to be anything but invincible against the Dark Elves. It just created so much more tension and the very real possibility of characters getting hurt and possibly getting killed. Now, I'm not saying that any major characters did get killed, but the tension was certainly there. I also love how the stakes just got raised for like all the characters. And since we had the first movie that introduced us to all these characters, well, let's just say that when things get real, and they do get real, we actually care about what's going on. The best thing about this movie, though, was the relationship between Thor and Loki. Watching these two together and playing off each other was just so much fun. Actually, I would say that Loki just made this movie, as most people probably thought that he would. I think there is a reason why, despite this being Thor's movie, there is such focus just on Loki. He's just such a fun character, and Tom uh, Hiddleston, he just has such fun and such joy playing this role. I mean, you can just see it. And Chris Hemsworth, good as Thor, but he really does his best work when he's either with Loki or when he's playing like Thor, just kicking evil ass. I also loved all the focus on all the other Asgardian characters, such as Lady Sif, Hamdell, Volstagg. I have to say that the Asgardians as a whole just stood out so much more in this movie. Though that probably has to do with the combination of just there being more focus on Asgard, as more of this movie is taking place on Asgard and just within like the Nine Realms. But and mix that in with just a much darker, grittier tone and just a lot of the campiness and cheesiness of the first movie was just gone. I mean, still there, but not nearly as much. Now on to those things that I didn't care for as much. The first is a slight nitpick, and that being that the tone of the movie can be a tad inconsistent at times. All the Marvel movies just have like a good mix of serious action with comedy elements there. But most are able to space them out pretty well. So when those more intense emotional moments do happen, they do have like much greater impact. Iron Man 3 did this like extremely well. This movie gave us like some strong emotional moments, but then just descended into outright silliness without just giving us a lot of time to really process the emotional stuff first. It's not a huge problem, and it only happens like a handful of times, but you know, Iron Man 3 got this perfect. Avengers got this perfect. This movie dropped the ball just a bit with that. And I'm sorry to say, but I'm not shocked because when it comes to Thor, I always felt that they do Thor, but most of their real attention, it's mostly focused on either Iron Man or Captain America. And once again, Iron Man 3, great movie, and the upcoming Captain America, the Winter Soldier, I'm sure is also going to be a truly great epic movie. And I'm just expecting them both to just be far superior films. All right. Here we go. All right. The next nitpick being that I still don't get the relationship between Thor and Jane. Listen, if anyone watching this is a fan of that couple, please explain to me just what I'm not seeing or getting because I still find their relationship to be forced and the two just have no real reason to be in love. I mean, I guess for Jane, she's in love with Thor because, he's a demigod and a superhero, but I mean, that's just like really shallow hero worship. But with Thor, I mean, what does he like about Jane exactly? I had this issue with the first movie. I saw it as a friendship that maybe over time could become actual love, but then it just gets light switched into love with Eric Selvig saying, "I see the way she looks at you." I just, I never got it. I'm sorry, I never got it. And then on top of that, I just like Lady Sif so much more. I mean, if I had to pair Thor with somebody, it would have been Lady Sif. I'm sorry about that. Um, Mostly because I actually see those two as having, things in common. I mean, they're both warriors. They're both from Asgard. They're both immortals. And then on top of that, I mean, Sif doesn't always see eye to eye with Thor. The two do have their differences. I can see them more as a couple. I think they just fit so much better than Thor and Jane do. Not to mention, I mean, call me crazy. I just found Jamie Alexander to be way hotter than Natalie Portman. I know that to some people that might sound like Palas for me, especially one friend of mine who I know loves Natalie Portman, but I just found Jamie Alexander just way hotter, way hotter. Even more ironic is that Sif is actually Thor's love interest in the comic books. I mean Jane was too, but Jane goes back to like the original like Thor comics. I don't think that she's been a part of the comic books for like years now. But I guess Kevin Feige and the producers felt, well, since she was his original love interest, that they decided to make him his love interest in this movie, but it worked better in the comics than it did in the movie. In the comics, it just made sense because in the comics, Thor lived on Earth for a long time and he was in a mortal body for a long time, but he could transform back and forth from his mortal body to his demigod self. That's how Thor was first introduced in the original comic book. So his romance with Jane just worked way better there. Um, in fact, were the human characters really needed at all? I mean, okay, Eric Selvig, I would keep, though I'd handle his character way differently. And what I'm saying goes back to the movie, maybe having a bit too much comedy, than it probably should have. Or they should have just had Shield in this movie. I mean, they were there in the first movie, and I know they're going to be there in the Winter Soldier, which is the next Captain America film. I mean, I didn't feel that you really needed to have Jane or Darcy beyond like, well, they're characters from the first movie, so we have to have them in this movie, and it really just took away from Asgard and the Asgardians, who I just found way more fun and just way more interesting to watch. But despite all that, this was still a very good sequel, and will likely, like the first movie, it will probably grow on me over time. But even on first viewing, I can tell you it's a very good follow up. I'm loving the darker edge of the Marvel Phase 2 cinematic universe. Iron Man 3 was a good start, and I'm expecting great things from Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course, Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. These are all set for 2014 and 15, respectively. I'll also stay tuned for. There's not one, there's two after the credit scenes. One which sets up Guardians of the Galaxy, which I mentioned because unless you're like a massive comic book fan, you might not know what Guardians of the Galaxy is, especially if you're being introduced to this whole world of superheroes and comic books, through these films. So the after credit scene might be like slightly lost on you. So yes, there is. So if you see one, the first one you see, it's setting up Guardians of the Galaxy. So please keep that in mind. And yes, I know that that's like it's like a very, very minor spoiler. So please don't kill me. The second after credit scene is just like your basic after credit scene. Um, but as for Thor the Dark World, I'm going to give this movie a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely check it out. If you love Thor, if you're a Thor fan, I think that you are definitely going to love this sequel. And also, stay tuned as very, very soon I will be doing a Marvel Phase 2 and Phase 3 video in which I will be outlining what you can expect from the future Marvel Cinematic Universe. So stay tuned. That is coming very, very soon. I'll be talking about the next Captain America movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, the next Avengers movie, and some other big plans, as well as some more possible future superhero movies. So look for that very soon. And until next time, this is Javi signing out.